fellow YouTubers. This is Bill McFadden from Tone Pure Music, and in this video we're going to get into a romantic love cue called Love Reaches Out, which you heard if you listened to part 1. And here's the piano sketch. We have the piano with the bass, and as you can see, I have written in the chords, and that's something we should probably get into for those of you who are not familiar with this chord notation and what some of these chords are. Here we have a G diminished seventh. Here we have a D major seventh, E flat major seventh, and so on. And so these could be chords that some of you are not familiar with. So, and also we see there's an E flat major 7 over here. So one thing as a composer, you need to be familiar with your major chords, your minor chords, your seventh chords, which would include your major sevenths, minor sevenths, and also diminished sevenths. So we'll be getting into that. But before we get into, and also we're going to be taking a look at the cue applied to a video, which the cue is actually written for. And then we'll get into some of the characteristics of romantic or music with positive emotions. So before we do that, let's take a listen to the cue. And when we do, see if you can identify the instruments, because we're talking about orchestration as well. Identify the instruments that you hear in this orchestration. I did reorchestrate it from part 1. So see if you can tell what the changes were and what the instruments are that are included in the orchestration. So here comes the orchestration. Okay, let's see the orchestration. Actually, the instruments, as you can see, are now listed. We have harp, we have keyboard, we have a B-flat clarinet, we have an oboe, and we have some sordino strings outlining the harmony as pads, and then we have the alto flute. So that was the instrumentation. So let's go ahead and see the orchestration in context with the video. So here we go.
I kept hoping I'd run into you until finally you walked into my hotel room.
Like a knight in shining armor, perhaps?
No.
Trouble is, I'm the one that needs saving. Like today, I was losing. And then I saw you watching.
Oh my that.
Perhaps my first serve is getting a little much.
Oh, hey, look. There it is. The comet, see? With the little tail behind it. Hardly anything, is it?
Barely moving.
You have to wish on it. You wish on your next match?
Wouldn't work if it's over.
Who do you play?
Good friend of mine, actually. He's a pro.
A friend? I think you should know how to beat him. What are his weaknesses?
Sausages, Wagner, men in leather shorts.
Your game. That's why I gave up having girlfriends in tennis. You have to dig extra deep to kill your friends.
No.
So there we have the cue in its context. So the next thing we'll do is take a look at the Sibelius rendering of it and take a look at the harmonic structure and also the melody line and how that relates to the harmonic structure. So here we have the piano reduction. The first chord, as you can see, I start with measure 5 as a D chord, D major chord. Now the next chord is a G with a D bass, so basically it's the inversion of G, where the D is on the bottom. And then we have a G minor, G minor, D in the bass. Then we have the G diminished over D, so has that sound. And then we repeat those same 4 chords in measures 9 through 12. Then in measure 13, we go to a D major 7th. Then we have a momentary B flat minor over the D flat. So here's your B flat minor in root position. So over D flat would be this inversion here. And then you add the second. So that would be the second note in the scale of B flat minor. Or you can just leave it as a B flat minor in this inversion. Then we go to the E flat major in measure 14. And then in measure 15, we're back to the D major 7. Then the E flat major 7, then to an F in root position, back to the D major 7, and then the B flat minor over D flat. So here's your B minor, B flat minor, go up first inversion, there you have it. Then your G over D, so here's your G in root position, first inversion, second inversion, so that gives you your D over G. Then you have a D, a diminished 7. So if you're not familiar with the diminished chords, basically you start with, say, the D, and then you go up a minor third, which is 3 half steps from there. And then you go up 3 more half steps. In other words, another minor third, and then you 3 more. So you have these notes, D, F, A flat, B, and you can use the same technique for any key. And then you have a C minor. So here's your C minor root position, and here you have first inversion. And then you have a D flat, first inversion, because the F's in the bass. Then here's your C, first inversion, with the E in the bass. And then your B major with the F sharp in the bass, so that's second inversion, because here's your root, first inversion, second inversion. And then we're back to now we're at a B flat. So with a D in the bass, so first inversion. Then an E diminished. So again, minor third, up a minor third, up a minor third, and then back to the D major. And we're actually starting the pattern over again at measure 26. So let's just listen to the MIDI, or not the MIDI mock-up, but the sketch. So here's the sketch. So here we're starting in the melody. Remember the chord, the harmony as a D, so we're using those three notes. And if you notice the D in the scale of D, so those are all notes in the scale of D. And then we go to the G chord. So those are all notes in the chord of G. Then we go to the G minor. Actually, they're notes in the scale of G, and they're not chord tones, but one of them is. The G is a chord tone. And then we're hitting the G minor now. And then for the diminished G, so you see G sharp is a chord tone in the G diminished chord, G diminished seventh. So starting from here, so here's your G diminished chord in measure 8. So we have one of the notes as well as the G itself. But we do have the G sharp, which is a non-chord tone. You can think of it as a chromatic passing tone. And then the same notes again, same melody again, it's just an octave lower. And then we get into the next phrase, starting in measure 13, where we have the D major. So we're actually almost outlining the notes in the chord of the D major 7. By the way, if you have a D chord, the way you get the major 7 is you go up a major third from the fifth of the D major chord. So here's your first, third, fifth. So we're actually, the only note that is not in the scale is the E, which is actually the second of the scale. And we switched to oboe here, by the way. That's why we're hearing an oboe. Then we have a B flat minor. So as you see, those four notes, 3 of them are chord tones. The C sharp, or if you like D flat, is actually in the part of the B minor chord, B flat minor chord. We're doing a chromatic passing tone there in the scale of B flat minor. And then we go to the A major. So you have so those are 2 chord tones in the E flat major scale. By the way, the arpeggios in the bass line are all conforming to the chords. So and that's something else we can look at. So here we have the D major chord again. So we're actually repeating that phrase. And now we have a series of triplets. We're in the E flat major chord. So So the E flat major scale. So we're going. We're actually doing a Lydian scale for E flat. There's your normal scale, but we're going. We have the A, and that's a common scale to use in intimate ballads and love themes, romantic cues. And then we switch to F. So here we have a passing tone between the two chord tones, C and A in the chord of F. And then the D major 7 again, chord. We have the same phrase that we had there in measure 15. And now we're coming to a different modulation. We're in B flat minor. So playing it from here. So in the B minor scale, so we have, that's part. So instead of doing the G flat, we're doing the G major. And then we go to the G chord and so on. So those are chord tones in G. Those are actually chord tones in a G 7th chord. So we could actually call it a G7 over D. And those would all be chord tones. And then we go to the diminished D, which, and so you have G sharp. So it's like you have a passing tone in the chromatic scale, or actually in the diminished scale. And then we're going to C minor over E flat, which is basically your C minor chord. So the E flat in the melody is in the is a chord tone. There's another chord tone, passing tone, chord tone. And then we have the D flat over F. And so here's a D flat over F. So if you look at the notes, we have E sharp. So again, you have a D flat major. So there's basically an E flat, C sharp or D flat. So some chromatic passing tones, and then C over E. So chromatic passing tone there, and 2 chord tones. And then a B over F sharp. So basically it's a B chord, second inversion. So actually here you have B as an on the chord and you're chromatically going under it. And then here we have G sharp. And then again, we have that little chromaticism in there. and then B flat. So we're basically going from the chord B, descending down to B flat. So a little bit of chromaticism in the modulation. And actually here we had a C chord, and then we went to a B chord, and then we went to a B flat chord, and we went down. Actually, the E diminished, if you go up by minor thirds, it's actually contains the same notes as the B flat diminished. So you could say you're going from a B flat to a B flat diminished, and then you're going to the D major 7. And that's where it starts over again. Now notice in the E diminished, we're going. So really starting on the E, the note of E, if you go up a whole tone and a half tone, you get that phrase. And if you start on G, the second note of the E diminished 7, and go up a half note, whole note, half note again, whole note, half note. And then from there, so if you go from B flat, then go up a whole tone and a half tone, you actually are getting a scale consistent with the E diminished 7th chord. So you can use that whole step, half step based on each of the notes of the E diminished chord. You can also do a whole step, half step, and that fits a diminished chord as well. And then we're back to the D major 7 again. So again, well, it looks like we had 2 major 7th chords, the D major 7th and the E flat major. So again, you take your major D chord and then go up from the 5th, go up a major 3rd, and you have your D major 7. Take your E flat chord, go up from the 5th of the chord, the 5th note of the chord. Actually, it's the 5th note of the scale, or the 5th note. Actually, the 5th note of the scale. So you have your 1st, 3rd, and 5th. So from the 5th, if you go up a major 3rd, you have your E major 7. So that you really need to get into your major 7ths, minor 7ths. For minor 7ths, if you have a C minor chord, to get the minor 7th, you just go up a minor 3rd from the 5th note of the chord. That gives you a minor 7. So that pretty well gives you the melody. And again, as I mentioned before, the notes in the bass are outlining the chords. Actually, this one here skips the 3rd. It's just, we're just doing the 1st, the 5th, then we're going back to the 1st again, and the 5th, and the 1st. And most of them are using the 3rds as well. So your arpeggios outlining the notes and the chords, and there will be some passing tones as well in the arpeggios. And it sounds like this. So I hope you were following along with that. As you can see, reading music is a very handy skill to get into orchestration. And at the very end, we had a slight change. We went from the B flat over D to the E flat major 9. So that's basically your E flat major 7, and then you add the 9, which is an octave lower than the second. So the second in this case would be F. So, or you could go ahead and play the 9th an octave lower, which would basically make it a second. Or here we have the 9th. So that pretty much wraps up this tutorial on this particular romantic cue. So this is Bill McFadden from Tone Pure Music. If you found this instructional, if you like what you saw, then please click like. And if you want to keep this channel alive, then please subscribe. So this is Bill McFadden from Tone Pure Music, signing off.